In May of 2023, two black women traveled from Philadelphia to Traverse City searching for connections to their family's past. A white man from Grand Rapids told them that his family and theirs were intertwined over 100 years ago near the village of Empire. What made Kevin reach out to people he had never met? What did he offer them? Was it a scam? And why would Carmen and Colleen take such a chance? Let's try to find out, beginning here at Cherry Capital Airport in Traverse City.
Well, we're greeting a couple ladies from Philadelphia who are the granddaughters of Australia Bryce Young. Her mother, back in 1910, took care of my grandmother and her siblings when my great-grandmother Lizzie passed away. They're visiting because I reached out to them over a year ago, actually. I just wanted to find their family because I had found out that their family was instrumental in my grandmother's welfare. We got to talking on phone and on Zoom meetings, and they just decided that they wanted to come up and see the old homestead and walk around where their family was from.
As Carmen and Colleen learned, the homestead land, once owned by their great-great-grandparents, Anna and Levi Johnson, is now part of the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore.
The area is so beautiful.
Oh my God, it's gorgeous.
So I think also on our first day, we went to the dunes, and we were looking over down to the beach area, and I said, are we in the United States? Because I didn't feel like I was in the United States.
Right.
Because here I'm in the area, I've been to Caribbean islands before, and I was like, hey, what am I doing going to an island when you have something as beautiful right here?
Growing up, we were always together. But as far as knowing things, we knew bits and pieces. We heard a name here, somebody else might have heard a name there. So what I did was I took those names and I said, let me play around with ancestry. You know, who knows what we'll find out. And as I did ancestry, names were popping up. So in turn, I would ask the family, like, did you hear about this name? I knew about faith, hope, and charity.
Okay.
I knew that, but I didn't know who was who.
Yeah. Which one was our great-great-grandmother? Who was Australia's mother?
Right.
While Colleen was struggling to identify the ancestors in her family tree in Philadelphia, Kevin was discovering just how important some of those ancestors were to the lives and survival of his ancestors.
Joseph Payment, my great-great-grandfather, came out of Canada back in the 1860s and homesteaded 160 acres here on the east part of Empire Township. His son, my great-grandfather, Frank Payment, raised his small family here. Behind me is a very small foundation, but in that small foundation, in that small house, my great-grandpa Frank and his wife Lizzie, back at the turn of the 1900s, had 3 children. My great-aunt Mary, my grandmother Adeline, and their little brother Charlie. And great-grandma Lizzie passed away in 1910. She was 23. She died of tonsillitis, infection from tonsillitis, if you can imagine, something that we don't worry about too much these days. And great-grandpa Frank took it hard, and there was no child services or anything like that. He relied totally on the community and on family to take care of his kids. He enlisted the help of Charity Johnson. She was a young woman who had a daughter of her own, Australia, and he hired her to basically be a housekeeper and to watch over his small family. And so she was out here with her daughter and with my grandmother and Great Aunt Mary and Uncle Charlie. And for 2 or 3 years, she took care of my grandmother. Great Grandpa Frank found out about Charity and her availability because Charity's mother and father, Annie and Levi Johnson, were also pioneering homesteaders here in Empire Township. They were right along Little Glen Lake, and they were neighbors with some other relations of mine, the Welch family. I went looking for Australia. Now, it's not going to be hard to find that name in census records, and it wasn't. Australia was listed in Philadelphia starting in 1940, and I thought, well, I've got to be able to find somebody. So searching through genealogy records, ancestry, Facebook. I even used Facebook to search for them. There was a Philadelphia city Facebook group, and I applied to get onto that group.
I found him in my messenger, and I just opened it up, but I was like, this man sent me a message in February. I opened it up in September. I opened it up, and he was, explaining to me who he was and this and that and the other. And I was like, well, how do you know my grandparents? Like, how do you know for sure that's my grandparents? And then he sent me a picture that has been in our family forever. I was like, why do you have a picture of my grandmother?
Right.
When she was a baby, like, why do
Right.
you have a picture? And then after that, then that's when we start connecting. I'm telling the other family members, like, such and such and such. I met this guy named Kevin. He's on Facebook. He has a lot of information about our grandparents.
Right. We really didn't know what to think,
Right.
because he knew so much about our family, and we had that initial Zoom video call,
Video call.
with Kevin, and we had the opportunity to ask questions, and he again was asking questions of us,
Right.
because the first question he asked were, are you the descendants of Australia Young?
Yes.
Because he wanted to make certain he had the right people. So, there was apprehension on his behalf also, as it was for us.
Amongst all the pictures at my Welch cousin's homestead, there were pictures of a black family and individual people interspersed here and there, and school pictures and community events. And there was one in particular. There was a picnic, a 4th of July picnic in 1910 on Little Glen Lake, and quite a few families were there, the Welches, the Harrigers, the Wickhams. It was just a normal 1910 outdoor shot. In that photograph was a young woman, a young black woman, sitting right up front, with her baby. And it was Australia Bryce. Charity's married name was Bryce. And they were there at the picnic because Australia was born in 1909, like many of the other children that they were celebrating at the picnic, as well as the 4th of July. And that kind of took me along another route of finding out a little bit more about Charity, her daughter Australia, and whatever happened to them. And that led me to Boyne City, which also led me to Philadelphia, which led me to the descendants of that little baby, Australia Bryce.
Dr. Shelley Murphy is also a descendant of black homesteaders who settled just south of Empire in Benzie and Manistee counties. Murphy is a professional genealogist working for the Descendant Project at the University of Virginia. She provides critical guidance to people seeking information about their ancestors.
Number one, understand that if you're going to research African Americans in this country, you're going to have to start with the white Americans in this country. There's no separate thing. You're talking about people, you're talking about population, and you got to look at a whole community. Don't try to just look for, say, Levi Johnson. Who is around Levi? Who had, if he was enslaved, who had access to him? Or if they were free, who is around them? Who did he work for? Did they farm? But you got to stop looking at surnames and look at the whole community. And again, who is around them. And this is how I find people in different counties. My primary job for the University of Virginia is to find descendants of enslaved laborers from Thomas Jefferson's time till 1865. The majority of those people I'm looking for are first name only. There's no last name. And then when they get free, that name can change 5 times. And then of course, spelling doesn't count. So the biggest tip is if you know where they're at, then you're gonna have to focus on the local resources and exhaust those before you go hanging out on Ancestry.com or Family Search. You have to soak up the local resources. Why do I say that? Because Ancestry and Family Search and these other nationwide databases came into that county and scanned those records from that local area. They're not made in Salt Lake City. They are made locally. So I also recommend highly that they join either a public library or the local historical society and find out if there's any genealogy groups. The society will know if there's genealogy groups, and then you become part of that group. This is where you ask questions, this is where you share information from. And next thing, I would go on social media. A lot of people are scared of Facebook, but if you don't find the county and the state that you're researching, then you start that group right there. And then you build off who you're looking for. Because people will find you because they're gonna have the same questions, And so that's the best tip, is to exhaust at that local level, but look community-wide. Don't just try to find just your family. And there's also a myth that's out there that African Americans who were enslaved took on the slaveholder's name. During the colonial time, it's more prevalent, but after that, no. And those names changed. And it could have been a former slaveholder's name, or it could be a parent or a grandparent's slaveholder's name. And I have this belief that babies were sold away, that they always kept a name so that child could find them. And so you would tend to see that a lot more prevalent in those cases, that yes, I was on the Johnson, plantation. That child's gonna remember that. Even though they might forget everything else, but they will remember mama's words. And I just believe those are some of the things that happen if there was a chance for that conversation. And African Americans also, for researching, is to think about it. They could be rented. They were also insured. They were used as collateral. They were also mortgaged, besides the buying and selling. Every one of the things I just listed was also a source for a record. And so you have to think of it that way as well. And during that slavery time in this country, they're property. So there's no sense trying to find people in the census, because your property is not in the population census.
I've been interested in local history here in Leelanau County for 40, 50 years. And one of the stories that we've all been so curious about was this African-American family that showed up here, where everybody else was from New York State and were from Norwegians and Scandinavians. And so getting to know Kevin led me to help his research and to pursue it further myself. One of the things that I always think is that history is written by the people who stayed. So we know so much about, so many families have been in Leelanau County for generations, and we know their history, but the people who left for various reasons, as the Johnsons did 100 years ago now, it's very hard to find anything out about them. People don't remember them. They didn't leave records. Another person who was like that was Mrs. Lois Todd. She was a remarkable woman. She lost her husband tragically when she was quite young, 2 very small children, and had to take over the businesses. They had a hotel and a general store in Glen Arbor. And it turns out that she was from New York State. She lived in a little village called Woodville. And coincidentally enough, that is where Annie Johnson lived after the Civil War. Annie Johnson lived with a family there in Woodville, New York. And Lois's family, the Eastmans, lived on a farm right outside of town. So after her husband died and she was left with 2 little boys, our belief is that Annie, who she had known when she was growing up back there in New York State, came out to help. And that would be how she probably met Levi. And now Levi is harder to determine how he might have come. We know that he was from North Carolina. We know that he had been a slave. And we know that he acquired land under the Homestead Act. And he was a late arrival. Another early settler had abandoned his homestead claim, and it wasn't the most likely place to have a farm. It's hilly, it's pretty remote, wasn't very likely, but that's what was available. And so he entered the homestead claim, fulfilled the requirements over the 5-year period. And interestingly, he had one of the largest orchards in the township and raised a lot of strawberries. And I like to think about that that's quite a nice thing, that somebody who was a slave in the South, would have worked hard at different things, that his real interest when he came here was in fruit production and orchards. And he probably worked mostly to support himself, cutting cordwood for the ships. But I like to think that really his love was his large strawberry patch and his orchard and all the apple trees that he had planted, some of which can still be seen up in where the Johnson farm was.
The Leelanau Historical Society has been in existence since 1957. The advancements we're making in understanding history have changed a lot since then. And so the knowledge of the stories of this land become richer and deeper the better we get at researching history. And so at present, this region is not very diverse, but we are learning that historically, this area was much more diverse. Many people are already aware of the Anishinaabe people, the indigenous people that inhabited and stewarded this land, but they're not familiar with the homesteading stories that we now know included African American families.
One of the ways to put the Johnson family into context is that they are arriving on what felt like a frontier, right? In fact, at that time, it was still being called the Great West, even though today we think of it as the Midwest. But long before the Johnsons arrived, there were people of African descent in what we now know as Michigan. One of the things that I really want to stress here is that Michigan, the Midwest, that old Northwest Territory frontier was diverse from its earliest days of colonial settlement. There were diverse indigenous peoples there. And then, of course, starting in the early 1700s, you had the Afro-French, who were trading and living with indigenous people and were traveling all over this region, including the Great Lakes. So by the time there was a United States, by the time we'd won the American Revolution, there was 3 generations of African-descended people who had been living with and familiar with all the other diverse people in Michigan, right? Then there was another big wave that I call the First Great Migration. And these were not people who arrived on the Underground Railroad. And I think that sometimes surprises people because so much of the narrative around the Midwest, around Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Wisconsin, these states that were once the old Northwest Territory, surrounds the idea of the Underground Railroad. This idea that there were white people there who were helping enslaved African-descended people move into freedom, right? But in reality, there were thousands, tens of thousands of free African-descended people, many of whom had been born free, had been generations free, who were moving into the old Northwest Territory as soon as the American Revolution was won, as soon as this important document was written called the 1787 Northwest Territorial Ordinance.
The things that drive Black people to move north and then west are the same things that drove other people to move north and west as the 19th century is closing. There's opportunity out there on the frontier. And the northern part of the state, upstate New York was not necessarily as hospitable as people might think it was. And the West promised open frontier. You find people that are moving, like the exodusters. These people in the 1870s, exodusters, who are a group of people in the Black people in the South that say, you know what, enough is enough. So they just packed up and moved out to places like Kansas. They were Western pioneers and moved out west because, like many people, they would look to the frontier to establish communities, and they did. There were a number of Black people that established some free communities out there in Kansas and other places further on, and that's how they got to Colorado and so on. So they were looking to get beyond anything that reminded them, certainly of the South, certainly of slavery, certainly of what they'd been through. The East Coast was not necessarily all that hospitable. It's getting crowded even for their time. So they went west to establish a brand new life and get opportunity.
Why are we not so aware of this history, of the fact that there were dozens and dozens of African-American farming settlements across the UP and across Michigan before the Civil War, that people of African descent were some of the earliest and most successful pioneers in Michigan, including Black Revolutionary War veteran and his family who came here from New Jersey and settled in the east part of the state in the 1810s. I think it's because there are myths around our past that have been created by historians with my skin color, in all honesty, right? Who have whitewashed the past, who have whitewashed this history, to elevate the history of white people, to make the narrative about white settlers and white pioneers, and to literally erase these histories from textbooks and from the history books. But I still think these histories are very important, even though they are complicated and they are hard. There are sorrows and there are horrors. But I want to stress here that I think this is really important history for us to know. If we lose the full breadth of Michigan's history, of this region's history, we are losing our heroes as well. And it's so important that we know them, because there's always going to be hard things that happen, including in the present. One of the most wonderful ways that we can learn about how to stand up to those hard things, how to make the right choices, is to look at our past and to look at the leaders, the founders, all of the diverse people who helped to settle this state, including the Johnsons.
So my name is Phyllis Lynn Pollard, and I am a descendant of Levi and Anna Johnson, who were one of the first Black family homesteaders in Michigan, in Empire, Michigan. So I'm here because, we always had these pictures of my grandmother when she was a little girl with families that we have no idea who they are. And it raised questions of, well, where do we come from? Who are we? What are our roots? And then once the whole thing with Facebook and Kevin and my sister Colleen, making the connection, and then we found out who those people were in those photographs, and that they lived in Michigan, hence why I'm here in Michigan. And then to see the places that Carmen and Colleen visited when they were here on their first visit last year. And just to see where my ancestors lived and what the area looks like now, because I know it certainly doesn't look like, what it was when they were here.
As you heard, there were many Black homesteaders and pioneers who settled in this area before and after the Civil War. Some of them were buried here in the Joyfield Township Cemetery in Benzie County, which is south of Leelanau County. Shelley Murphy and her brother Calvin Murphy are descendants of two families of Black pioneers, many of them buried here. A Vietnam War veteran, Calvin lives nearby in Bear Lake.
They came here to homestead, but on the other hand, they were fleeing oppression. Slavery was still going. Civil War was looming, and part of them came during the Civil War, and they were getting away from that. And to me, I just couldn't imagine what was going through their head, fleeing what they were doing, but at the same time, trying to do something better for their family and getting to a safe place, and they ended up here in Northwest Michigan.
The Davis family, which would be William Davis, and his wife was Mildred Ann Brand. They came in about the end of 1862 or the beginning of 1863. And then they put in an application for homestead in 1863. So that's when they came in. They had some children with them. The firstborn child of Mildred's was Joseph Brand. He came about a couple years after them, and then he filed a homestead also. The Davises left out of Pennsylvania, actually Franklin County, Pennsylvania, stopped for about 5 years in Medina, Ohio, well, Wayne County and Medina, and then came up here. The Marsh family, George Marsh, wife is Mary Catherine Goins, and they actually came out of what is now known Jefferson County, West Virginia, and they also stopped in Ohio only for a couple years and then came into Manistee County.
With the older families that I knew growing up, and there's not many left today, I never heard a bad word about my family. They were highly respected, known as good, hard workers. My cousins in Joyfield, they were known as quite the horsemen. They raised draft horses and that. Oh, I heard stories how they helped run power lines through swamps and stuff. This is in Benzie, and the ones over here outside of Bear Lake were farmers, known for, they had horses too, but raising prize cattle. And great-great-grandma, she was known at the county fair for her jams and stuff, but they were known good. But I just noticed a trend as the generations changed, that was lost. And now it just seems like there's a lot of negativity. And you can even take this on a national level. It's not many people. They don't want Black history told. And I think as pioneers in this area, my family helped contribute, settle this area, and establish it. And there's people nowadays don't even want it known that colored people had lived here before, and that hurts. You know, I just can't see why. It's our history, and it's American history. And as long as I'm alive, I'm going to tell that history. And I'm proud of my family and what they did.
I know that people take a lot of pride in northern Michigan that, for example, Idlewild, Baldwin County, the establishment they called the Black Paradise for a time. And it was established as a place where Black folks could go and essentially have a good time without being harassed or penalized for being who you were. But there's also that history, as you get to the 19th century and the 20th century, of a thing called sundown towns, where there were small towns, including northern Michigan, that specifically said, don't be caught here by sundown, or else. Those kind of towns existed in this state, in Ohio, in Illinois. The nature of those kind of towns, and the fact that even though many people came north after the Civil War looking for opportunity, many Southerners came north as well. And they did not believe that they did not leave behind in the South their attitudes. And the philosophy of the South and the Confederacy and all the historical distortions that go along with it came and migrated north as well. So geographic positioning does not necessarily mean some type of openness of mindset or a more welcoming or tolerant attitude. And the mere fact that even today you can go in some parts of Michigan, northern Michigan, and find Confederate flags hanging around speaks a lot to the legacy and the tradition of the presence of that mindset and the Civil War.
As a descendant of white European settlers of Leelanau County, it's not always my place to tell stories of other people in this area, such as the Anishinaabe people or that of the descendants of Levi and Anna Johnson. And that's why it's so important that we connected with Lynn, Carmen, and Colleen to help tell this story and to bring it to life.
I thought it was a great encounter, and it's like, okay, let's do it. Let's go visit our ancestors' home and to acquire more information. So,
especially about who's who.
From there, nothing but emotion.
Yeah.
It's
overwhelming.
It's been totally overwhelming. Our expectation was small.
Right.
Oh, if we get a little information, that's fine.
Right.
Okay. But it has exceeded our expectation on so many levels.
Yes.
And we have been welcomed by the community. We really have.
Yes.
And I mentioned about going to probate, so that was wonderful.
And for them to have actual records. They kept it very well. And we actually get to touch the actual records.
The document, yes.
And read them.
And another special event or encounter was meeting the Welsh brothers. That was a highlight because they were so excited to meet us.
Yeah, and then for them to say the Welch, the Pavements, and the Johnsons are here again together.
100 years later.
100 years later.
So who knew we were coming an anniversary? So we've made it into an anniversary. Our 100th anniversary of celebrating these three families that were friends.
That were friends. I mean, good friends.
It's just been wonderful.
Yes. Especially walking on the land.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that was an opening. Mm-hmm. This is where they lived. Mm-hmm. So we were able to walk that land. And I think I sent out a couple of texts to some cousins and said, we're walking on the land, the property of where Levi and Anna lived, and Charity and Faith and Hope and Leon,
Levi Jr.
Right, exactly.
Owen.
Yeah, so it just made it just come alive.
So the homestead land, that was beautiful. That was emotional to see that. It almost felt like our presence, like they knew we were there, our presence was known. And then the cemetery, to see the cemetery and the markers for the family members whose names I recognize that I know of. And the cemetery is beautiful, well kept. And so it just felt like I knew that my ancestors were loved. They were loved, they were cared for. And it's still showing in this day because the cemetery is beautiful.
4 years ago, I started the journey of discovering my own family, their own roots, and I discovered everything that I could possibly find out about great-grandma Lizzie.
Okay.
And in the process of doing that, I discovered another part of the story. There was another woman who was, in my mind, instrumental in the upbringing of my grandmother and her two siblings, and that was Charity Johnson. And she had a little baby with her, Australia, your grandmother.
Yes.
So I said, I've got to find these people. gotta find them and I gotta thank them.
Oh, come on. It's okay.
And I am so thankful. And this journey of finding you guys was because I needed to find Charity and I needed to find Australia. And if there were any descendants, I needed to thank them personally.
So in finding us, you allowed us to now find Charity and find. So what a gift. So
Yeah.
it's a gift that keeps giving.
We gave to each other.
Yeah, right.
I held an early part of the family puzzle. You guys held the later part of the family puzzle.
Yeah.
So now you can go home to your cousins and your second cousins and the rest of your family and say, we've got the whole picture now.
Yes.
And I can do the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Group hug.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Standing here on the old Levi and Anna Johnson homestead, you can imagine a very modest wooden house, a small barn sitting just up the slope there. And if you look hard, you can see a couple of old apple trees that may have been planted by Levi nearly 150 years ago. This property is now protected by the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore. And one day, there may be a plaque here to tell the Johnson story. How do we uncover more homesteads and their stories? How shall we honor the racial and ethnic diversity of those pioneers who helped build Michigan's communities?